This is an iconography discussion of the Oath of the Horatii. The Oath of the Horatii was painted by Jacques-Louis David in 1784 in France. It is oil on canvas and is 14 feet by 11 feet. The painting records an event in pre-Republic Rome. This painting is about the settling of a dispute between Rome and Alba Longa. Here we have an example of a painting in which the context of the subject matter is from around 642 BC, a very different world from the context of the painter in 1784 AD. Let's look first at the story behind the subject matter of the painting. The Roman and Alban leaders decided to settle the dispute over which they had been warring. There would be a fight between 3 Roman brothers who were triplets, the Horatii, and 3 Alban triplets of the same age, the Curatii. This agreement would save countless lives, but would be devastating to these 2 families. It was particularly ironic and hard for these 2 families. The men to fight were cousins. One of the Horatii brothers was married to the sister of his Alban opponents. Sabina is pictured here in brown. Another of the Horatii sisters, Camilla, pictured in white, was engaged at the time to one of the Curatii brothers. The moment captured in the painting is when the father of the Horatii makes his sons take an oath of allegiance to Rome. They swear on their swords to win or die for Rome. They seem oblivious to the anguish and sorrow of their sisters. Further light is shed by knowing the outcome. Only one brother of the Horatii survived out of all 6 combatants, so Rome was the victor. He came back home and was so angry to see his sister Camilla grieving instead of rejoicing that he won, that he killed her. Then he found out that she was engaged to one of the Curatii men he had killed, and he was tried for her murder. Now let's look at the context of David and the world in which he created the painting. 1784 was only a few years before the French Revolution, and David was a part of the revolt. Think of how much anger and unhappiness there had to have been to overthrow the government of France by force. This was painted in the time leading up to that, so the problems which led to this battle and the heroic emotions needed to fight it were relevant to the public at the time. 2 other factors are believed to have contributed to choosing this particular subject. The scene is said to have been inspired by the subject of the play Horace, a profoundly stoic tragedy written in the 17th century. It is likely that French people viewing this painting knew this story because of the success of the play. Also, public interest in all things Roman would have been high because of the archaeological discoveries of Herculaneum, excavated in 1738, and Pompeii in 1748. As word of these discoveries spread, much more slowly than now, there were new insights into the daily life, architecture, and art of ancient Rome. This is a neoclassical painting, which is typically characterized by a shallow picture box. We don't see far into the depths of the house or out a window at the back. It's defined by a severely simple architectural framework, the columns and arches of this room. Statuesque and carefully modeled figures. It is easy to imagine the figures as sculptures. The figures are arranged laterally and close to the foreground of the painting. And historical events and people are precisely described. David's method for creating a neoclassical work included the subject having grandeur and a moral, showing the conflict between love and patriotism, and selecting a subject that has connection, interest, and meaning for the public of his day. He balances emotion and restraint, and actually painted this for Louis XVI while supporting the faction that deposed him. He uses the classical device of forming a rough triangle with his figures, with the apex being the clasped swords. The three arches are reminiscent of Da Vinci's Last Supper, with the focal point being in the central arch. He uses linear perspective of the Renaissance in the pattern of the floor. Finally, we turn to interpretation of the painting. The message of the painting seems to be extolling the manly and heroic virtues of courage, patriotism, and unwavering loyalty to do what must be done. These seem to be emphasized over the less heroic emotions of love, sorrow, and despair symbolized by the Roman women. A different message could be warning that all war comes at a devastating price, and that it is easy to be caught up in heroism and not realize the damage done. This would explain why David makes sure that our eyes notice the despair of the women by putting Camilla in the white dress so that we can't ignore her. This is an example of researching and exploring the story within the painting, the story in the world in which it was created, and the symbolism used by the artist. We now know much more to help us understand the painting with this research than if we stop at just accepting that David in the 1700s painted something from Roman history without asking why.